Jim Groom.
He's staying cool in a basement in a foreign country, and we are doing international films, and thank God, because it is really hot over there, isn't it, in Italy?
Yeah, like I was telling you as before we got on, I was in Hamburg this week, and it was like 100 degrees in Hamburg. I was like, what?
What's
And then
this sort of Bavarian bullshit?
and no one has like air conditioning. So every place you go into, it's 100 degrees inside, if not more. And the funniest thing is, me and Tommy are under a tree at a bar. It's like 6 or 7 at night, sweating our, balls off. And then basically you see people like running by with like stand-up fans and shit. It's like, dude, it is truly an emergency. People are running around with fans. But anyway, it's good to be back in Italy where it's 105 degrees. So everything's great now.
And so you're hiding in the basement with the dehumidifier on, and
I am in the air-conditioned bunker, and it's only air-conditioned because there is no air conditioning that I've found in Italy. It's only air-conditioned because it's underground.
Yes, and so you couldn't be in the Bava studio, sadly, because it's just too fucking hot.
Too hot. And I'm hoping like all my vinyl hasn't melted and shit. Like, I'm like worried. It's so hot in there. Like my video games are fine. They love the heat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, the vinyl's all lined up and everything, but I don't know. It's like they're at temperature.
It's all gonna get like this,
It's not directly in the sun, but man, it's hot. So we'll see.
Oops. Okay. Those laser discs too, right?
But I don't think they have problems with the heat, but we'll find out.
Yeah. So we are on to our second international 90s indie. And this one's kind of cool. This is our first, and this is our 70th episode. Yay for us. We're hitting those round numbers, which is pretty cool. And this is, I was realizing this is the first film that wasn't a new release, like, One Battle After Another or Weapons, that we had never seen, neither of us had ever seen before. And this is The White Balloon. It's Jafar Panahi's first feature film, an Iranian filmmaker who was very young at the time, and reminds me a lot of Francois Truffaut, being a super young person doing a film about really young people, right? And this is the story of Razieh, a 7-year-old girl that wants just a better goldfish than the stupid skinny ones in her own.
I want a chubby white goldfish. Is that so hard, Mom?
And it's really wonderful because it's very much about, like, similar to 400 Blows, about young people or kids navigating adult worlds and trying to make sense of how adults behave. And this film is filled with lovely, like, misbehavior of adults, basically terrorizing a 7-year-old girl at multiple points, but at the same time taking care of her too. And so it's this wonderful balance of adults, being pranksters. I mean, at first when I was watching this, probably for the first 20 minutes, I was like, man, adults are being kind of like assholes to these kids, right? But the further along it went, the more I was like, no, this is a sense of humor. This is Panahi playing with all these different community members, which also led me to think of it as like a Maricord, right? And similarly, it starts, and we should back up before we're going to back up and talk some production notes here too. But the way it starts is it literally is like it's about the change of the seasons, the celebration of the spring coming, because this film is set in the Iranian New Year celebration of the Nowruz, where a Maricord is similarly starting as a spring celebration with a bonfire.
Interesting, yeah, absolutely.
And both movies are asking the viewers to navigate these communities of people that we're going to later meet and get to know. That's what's so cool.
And Amicord is like over a year, and this one is over like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I like that difference, right?
Yeah,
because you get the same cast of characters.
Yep.
But just within a very focused couple of streets in Tehran.
Yeah.
It's interesting in that regard. I agree with you.
So, just to back up a little bit, you did a lot of work. Tell us more of what you found out about this film, doing your quick little research, because this was, not a ton is written in the United
No.
States about this. So, but you found a few things.
And a lot of this is probably just refashioned from what you can find in Wikipedia. But what I like about this is you already mentioned it. Panahi or Pana, is that right?
Yeah.
Panahi.
Yep.
Panahi's basically a student of Kiarostami. And Kiarostami's kind of one of the bigger Iranian directors from the
Mm-hmm.
70s to the 90s. I did not know. Antonella knew of him. And she, as soon as I talked about the white balloon, she's like, oh, Kiarostami's part of that. And what's interesting, this led me down a whole rabbit hole of reading about his ideas of film, and he's a very minimalist filmmaker. He likes to film a lot with people talking in the car.
Mm.
He's very low budget. He likes to do everything on site, which make him a fan. I know, MBS, you're a big fan of like
Yeah.
in vitro, or however you would say that, or in situ. So it's interesting because I learned about at least one director who had a really big impact on this new wave of Iranian cinema. And one of the reasons why they made a lot of children's film they were talking about is it was very easy to work in parable to talk about bigger topics that might get censored. So a lot of their minimalism and a lot of this sense of dealing with actual non-actors in places around Iran makes for a really interesting filmmaking, and it's very distinctive. And I think there's not that many production notes because it's like, get the camera, go out on the street,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
It's totally
I love
man
that.
in the street camera making.
I know.
And there's very little production. There's very little overhead. I think these folks are making these films for super cheap.
Yeah.
Like no professional actors, no fucking, CGI, no special effects, right? It's just get on the street and make a film.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's wonderful in that regard. It's interesting too, because the note about it being a quote unquote children's film, right?
Yeah.
Pigeonholes the film to like being released in primarily children's theaters or children focused theaters in Iran. So the numbers of people that watched it initially was quite low, but over time, it gets into Cannes, right? And it wins an award, not the Palme d'Or, but an award called the Camera d'Or, which I don't even know what that is. And this is Iranian cinema being, in a funny way, getting out into the wider world. And you described in some of the notes how this is like a blossoming of Iranian cinema, part of that blossoming of Iranian cinema internationally, and getting respect from around the world.
I'll tell you, one of the things I did is after watching this, and I watched it and I was really blown away. Kiarostami, I was like, I want to know more about this guy. So I found out his masterpiece was a film called Close Up. So this afternoon, I sat down and I watched that.
Oh, wow.
And you can really see the impact of his filmmaking. And that's a really weird film. It's actually taken based on real events where some guy pretends to be a filmmaker and basically goes to a family and says, I'm this filmmaker. I want to use your house as a set. And then he's brought up on fraud charges. And then he gets to film the actual trial.
Wow.
And then he gets the guy who's the actual criminal to be in the film, as well as the director he was trying to be. And then the family that he really basically tried to like defraud. And whether he frauded them or not is an interesting question he brings up. They're all actors in this film.
Wow.
It's just bizarre. It is like nothing I've ever seen. It takes documentary and blends it with fiction, but in such a weird, strange, cool way.
Yeah.
So I can see why he might be a kind of icon for many of these young filmmakers coming up.
Yeah. And so, in this, he does another children's film, I say that in air quotes, fingers wagging in the air. But his third film is The Circle, and this begins his life of having to dodge and dance around the Iranian regime's suppression of his work. It gets banned, and then for many years he deals with arrests. He was Panahi was at one point in 2010. I can't remember what the inciting incident, what film it was. It's not this third film where he's basically sentenced to 6 years in prison and in a 20-year filmmaking ban, which is kind of crazy to think about. And he skirts around this, and he even wins the Palme d'Or in 2025 with his film It Was Just an Accident. But he's pretty much doing that. You get a sense that that's from outside of Iran now. Like, it's about Iranian political prisoners, and it's shot outside of Iran primarily. And he's gone back to Iran in 2026, and he has like a 1-year prison sentence hanging over him. And so this is a filmmaker whose life is just under duress endlessly. And it's kind of what's kind of cool is, like, this is part of the international, we're trying to do this thing. And now as you talk about this other director, and then Panahi, it's like, what it makes me think of is, like, maybe this will eventually lead us to do, a series that's within each country. Like, we're doing this kind of survey approach, right? We're bouncing around. We were in Australia, now we're in Iran. But I can see us coming back here and trying to sort through our understanding of that, from our, as best as we can, that culture and how it influences, in the time periods, influences the filmmaking.
And you have talked about this again and again, and I think it's true, and I'm with you on that 100%. Like, for you and I, this is kind of like a deep dive into film course. Like, we're
Yeah.
treating this like a film studies, and these things which come to our attention then obviously lead us down a kind of path. And the whole idea of Iranian filmmakers right now and the long history of this, at least, wave since the 70s, super interesting to me, because
Yeah.
once I saw this guy Kiarostami's film Close Up, I was like, it just feels so new and refreshing. It's one of those kind of films where you're just like, whoa, this is unique. I've never seen anything like it.
Mm-hmm. And it's also part of that whole thing that you mentioned that I always mention, which is, like, put me in a world that I don't know, and tell me a compelling story. Just let me.
Yeah.
And in this story, the thread that is pulled is the goldfish, and it's really wonderful. So, Razieh is a 6-year-old, very precocious girl, and apparently
she's 7, Michael. Don't
7.
call her 5, and don't call her 6. It's 7.
You make me lose it. I don't have enough to drink to put off my cough from this morning. And yeah, so Razieh is 7, and her mother is pissed at her from the jump, because her mother, and we're going to talk about the mother Zora, who basically is a woman of labor throughout the entire film. And that role is important to consider in the context of Iran, and the gender differences, and the fact that the father is literally never seen and is only heard yelling from the basement.
From the shower.
Yeah.
And there's a window onto the courtyard.
Oh, is that directly the shower? Is that what it is?
Exactly. He's handing him the soap and the shampoo right through the window and the shower.
So
and he's
funny.
Basically lording it over everybody.
Yeah, he's in the
from
shower.
the shower.
Yeah. And so Razieh is on her own in the marketplace, and the film starts with Zara looking for her and very pissed off, basically. She's got these 2 huge heavy bags, because she's done all this shopping for the Nowruz, that Iranian New Year celebration that's to come. And I was doing a little research on that, and it's pretty cool. And so the goldfish, I learned, is basically one of the objects that's placed in the table as one of the optional objects that's part of this representation of the materials of antiquity, like earth, wind, fire, and water, and it's kind of cool stuff. But I mean, I'm no expert, and no going to dive any further than that. But the goldfish isn't just a child's desire for a fish. It is something that's representative of the culture's presentation of the new year. And so they go all the way home, and Razieh is just endlessly talking about this fat goldfish she wants, right?
And she is just such an amazing actress.
Oh my God.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, the way in which she just acts with her eyes. I mean, I know she's 7 and they just maybe got lucky, or she's, like you said, precocious, but
Yeah.
like,
she's definitely precocious. Even like
she is pulling this movie off. But even
yeah.
before we get back to her house, and we could talk to her about that, you mentioned this in the notes, and it's worth talking about a little bit. Like, the first scene is the mother looking desperately for Razieh. And then you also get a quick cross section of Tehran.
Yeah.
You get those singers, those musicians coming into the bakery. You get the women following another group of people doing the ululations that we heard in Not Without My Daughter, like they have
Yeah.
that sound.
Yeah.
And like you really, it's an amazing,
It's really
bizarre like
dense. Yeah.
scene with people coming and going, and you don't know what she's looking for.
Right.
You have no sense of what world
Mhm.
you're in, and he's just throwing you in
Yeah.
Tehran. And I wonder if they're having a little bit of fun with you. If you're kind of a foreigner looking at this, you're
Yeah.
like, where am I? What's going on? But then slowly, like you said, you bring the mother, Zara, back to her daughter, and then you walk down a hallway or a sidewalk with these
Mhm.
chairs lined up on them.
Yeah.
And that's very odd too. And then you kind of start going into this world. It's really like he so adroitly brings you into this world, orientates you, and
Mhm.
then boom, off to the family. I
And
love the opening.
And like Amarcord, there's a lot of characters introduced. Like on a rewatch, you'd be like, "Oh, that's the balloon boy. That's the
Right.
tailor." Like all these people in this. Oh, that's the fish salesman. They're all there in that opening scene, apparently.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and what's so great though, one of my favorite things in relation to actually 400 Blows is immediately because she's scolded by her mother for going off on her own to try to find out where to buy a goldfish because she doesn't want her skinny ones from the courtyard pond. um, she does the mother does the thing where she's so irked that she just walks ahead away from her 7-year-old girl, and she's forced to follow because she's 7. What else is she gonna do, right? And
Well, run
and
away, which she seems to be good at.
well, yeah, this is true. When she sees the snake charmers, all the men watching the snake charmers. But this is this thing that is so it's not like I haven't seen this a dozen times in the park when I was, with my small kids, and you see a parent who's irked at their 7-year-old that's barking about something they want, or 5-year-old, and they're just like, "Fuck you, I'm going this way," right? And you stop, and it reminds me of like there's a story that we always tell about how B was being so annoying at one point. I just couldn't take it anymore, and I picked her up and I put her outside the front door, right, on our porch. And I was like, and I closed it and went back inside. And Amanda's like, "Where's B?" And it's like, I put her outside. He's like, "What are you doing?" And this idea of this irresponsibility of a parent walking away from a defenseless 6-year-old child, it's like, but that's so real. This idea of like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking to you. I have so much shit I'm trying to deal with, and you just won't stop going on about this stupid goldfish. And it continues into their home. And I just love that idea.
Oh, it's great. And I mean, to pick up on that thread, she won't leave alone on the goldfish. And
No.
as they're in the courtyard and the mother starts doing all the things and the father's screaming for soap because you're introduced to the son, Ali, who didn't get him shampoo, he got him soap instead. And the dad's pissed, so he has to go down and get shampoo.
Oh no, and he whips the soap at them. That
Into
is,
the pond.
yeah.
And this little fountain pond that's in the middle of the courtyard
Yeah.
is full of goldfish.
Yeah.
So like that's the joke, right? Like she wants this one white chubby goldfish, yet the mother's like, Zara, we're sitting on top of an entire like colony of goldfish that our neighbors come to get. So her frustration is like at an end, like with Jerry
Yeah.
Lundegaard. Like my patience is at an end, Mr. Lundegaard, right? Like I'm just done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really cool because like she's the classic little kid that's just like, this is my simple desire. And it's super simple. She's not having a tantrum about it. She's
No.
negotiating, right? And this is what makes her so precocious is first she tries to negotiate with her mother, and her mother is at the same time, her character, basically works the entire time we see her on film, right? She
Yeah.
never stops. And it's all domestic chores, of course. And she's got the groceries. And then from the groceries, she goes to doing something, cleaning up around the pond and directing her two kids, you do this, right? Ali, polish your shoes, Zara, help. I'm sorry. Razieh, I can't even remember, like, pick up this or put the
Get a
groceries
fish.
away.
She
Get it.
wanted her
Oh
to
yeah,
get a
get her
fish
to
and
fish.
put it in the
Thank you. Yeah.
bowl, right?
Right, which she actually does,
She doesn't
initially.
do.
No, it's
She
actually Razieh, right? Who
her
does.
neighbor does it. We'll
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about him
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
character.
And then later she's like, saying, "Don't get your father angry. Do this for him." And also, she's like vacuuming the living room, and you're just like,
Exactly.
it's she's like literally a whirling dervish of domestic activity, which speaks to like her role versus the father who is unseen and just yelling and caring for himself, right?
It's true, yeah. He's taking care of himself, and the thing he says, maybe he's like Dad. Later on in the movie, they say maybe he's like Dad, angry when he goes in the shower, and then tired and wants to take a nap.
Yeah, I
It's
forgot
so
about that.
great.
Yeah, it
It was
really
such a
is.
great little tidbit. But you're
Um,
right, and immediately, like with the bazaar, you're placed into this courtyard, and you get a sense that this courtyard, is a open space, and it's a familiar space for them, but also other people come in, so it's very porous. So then you have one of their neighbors, and I think you pronounce his name Razieh.
yeah,
Reza comes in and he says, my mother asked me to get a couple of your fish. And
right.
then, you know, um, I want to get it right. Zara says,
Yeah.
well, actually, did your mother say get my fish or get fish? And he says, specifically, it was your fish. And she's now has a sense of pride. She says, great, get a couple of fish and then get my daughter her fish because
Right.
she doesn't want to do anything because she's crying into the pond about this fat, white, chubby goldfish. So anyway, he gets the fish, gets the daughter the fish, and then he goes out. And he's got a sophisticated setup where he's obviously good at getting fish. But that's an interesting interlude. And you're like, oh, wow. So this is a tight knit
Yeah.
community.
Mhm.
Everyone's coming in, they're sharing their fish because obviously that's kind of an emblem for the new year and a kind of token of this ritual that they all celebrate. And so,
Mhm.
like, you get a sense like this whole community's coming together and it's cool. Like that space, even though it's humble, is super, like, it's good. It's a family space.
Yeah. It is initially. No, it is a family space, but
Right.
Razieh is an interesting character who pops back up briefly, and you almost could miss it, and it's really
Yes, I
wonderful.
agree with that. It's great.
Um, and so Razieh is not giving up her plotting. She's getting nowhere with her mother, so she turns to her brother, and she offers him a blue like balloon. And this is what's so wonderful is like this is my second one of my second favorite things is the idea of things that I relate to as a parent is the idea of siblings negotiating with one another, and how and it's over always the smallest little things, but to them, these little things are everything in the world. And we would always like, as our kids were old enough, they would share a tub, Wyatt and B, and they'd be in the tub together. And every once in a while, we would go downstairs for a moment and check on them. And then, but from downstairs, you would hear this, no, I don't want that ducky. And it was B responding to my son Wyatt's like little shifty like negotiations. It's like, and this is how they would like Wyatt was always really low talking and very careful and precise. And to this day, he's kind of this way. And he'd be like, B, you really want this little green ducky. You don't want the red ducky. The red ducky's not a really good red ducky, so I'll have the red ducky and you take this green. And she's like, no, her response is like, fuck you. Don't tell me what I want. And so this is what we're seeing between like basically Razieh and Ali. It's not as loud, but it's this like real negotiation going on over a balloon and a goldfish, right?
That's right. And it's deep business. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I mean, and that's what Panahi does so well is, and they talk about this, many people talk about this, like you never lose, not only it's not like, oh, this is just, a young 7-year-old girl's fetish around um uh a goldfish that she'll forget. And like all kids do, and we'll move
Yeah.
on.
They don't
She
remember
doesn't.
the red and green ducks. They
Yeah, and she
don't.
doesn't,
No.
it really becomes for her a mission, and
Mhm.
as a result, it becomes a mission for you as the viewer.
Yeah.
And so, what seems a silly negotiation, in fact, becomes the premise of an entire hour and a half movie that you're completely compelled by.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
as small as it is and as seemingly insignificant as it might be, like, this is the world. And I remember when they're talking about the negotiation, Ali brings up the price of the fish. He's like, it's 100 tona and toma. I don't
Toman,
remember,
yeah.
but
Yeah, and
toman.
Toman, and I learned this is like it's a euphem it's like a colloquial description because the currency of Iran is rials, and
Got it.
Toman are a tenth of that to bring down the number for so when you see the bill at first you're confused because they keep saying it's a 500 Toman bill, right?
Yeah,
But it's actually a 5,000 rial bill, right? And so
gotcha.
anyway,
So that's how they're doing it. It's like
yeah,
1/10 to say 500. So anyway, um, he's basically like 100 tona. I mean, you could buy 2 movie tickets with that. And I love
right,
the little
yeah,
movie thing.
yeah.
And so you realize that this whole movie is premised on the cost of 2 movie tickets, like the
Yeah,
entire narrative. And that's so funny because
yeah,
that's what we paid for it.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
and
there
that's
is something about that I
yeah.
think is really, like, simple and not over the top and, like, hitting you on the head, but it's like, this is about a small story,
Yeah.
and this is about the stakes for a kid that's everything in this world, and they do that so brilliantly. I think that's what sold me on this movie.
Yeah, and so the negotiation leads to, like, a deal. It's like, "No, I don't want this blue balloon, I want the one that your uncle gave you," and she's like, "Fine, deal." And so, Ali attacks his mission now, and he goes directly after his mother to say like, "Hey, maybe if I, clean your shoes," and she immediately sees through his deception, like, it's like, "No, no, no, you're polishing my shoes, your dad's shoes, and your shoes without question. I'm not giving you any money. I need the money for like New Year's presents that she's planning to give out to friends and family." And then he's like, and he goes at her again.
Yeah,
And this time he's like, no, no, I need to whisper it to you. And this is the thing you realize is like how smart Razieh is at the same time. She knows that her older brother has a special relationship with their mother. Like that Razieh is never going to get through the way that he can. Like he's a little, and we don't know what it is. And it's like while she's vacuuming, she's like, I'm going to just whisper it to you. And finally, we never hear what they say because the
no.
vacuum's going on and it's from a distance. And she turns it off and she looks at her daughter who's like pouting and she relents. And then the adventure is off. Let's get the goldfish.
Exactly, and she takes her goldfish bowl, puts the 500 tona in there,
Yeah.
and runs off. And it's
Yep.
such a great, like, like, here we go. And you're sold. You're in. You're like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You better get these goldfish, man.
And then this leads to just this kind of interesting plotting. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine of weird adults that
Oh my God,
basically
it's so good.
Razieh kind of walks through. And the first are the snake charmers. And this is this whole theme of like children and navigating the ways of adults. It's what I had written down. And it starts with the dervish snake charmers, which is like I was reading about it. It's like this is like a people that follow it like a Sufi version of Islam, and they're definitely a marginalized group within the very conservative, it's not, it's conservative Islamic State of Iran. And so there are these two men, and we've heard them in the beginning of the film because they've passed,
Yeah,
Razieh's mother and her had passed the snake charmers. She was curious and she gets pulled away. It's like, you don't go near those men because it's literally a crowd of adult men. And the
yeah.
fact that Razieh inserts herself into this space, and that's the title of this episode, is because she later describes to the old lady, it's like, it's like, I wanted to see the things that are not good for me. I've been told that I'm not allowed to see this. And so, of course, you tell a little kid you can't do this. She's like, well, I need to see what that is, right?
And she gets in the circle, and there's like horned rattlesnakes,
Yeah.
cobras. Like, it's no joke.
Yeah.
And obviously they kind of, but then, within seconds, one of the two kind of snake charmers comes over to her, grabs her, $500 bill or $5,000 reals and takes them. And
Yep.
your heart, like your stomach
You're like,
sinks.
yeah.
You're like, what? You can't do this. It's amazing how quickly they bring you in. And then they make her part of her show inadvertently. Like they're
Right.
like, see this young girl? She wants to see the snakes come out of the box. And she knows that the only thing snakes react to is the color of money. And they have their own little thing and they're
Oh,
having fun.
it's such a great
And
routine.
it's such a great routine. It's
Yeah.
such a great scene.
Yeah.
And they're playing off each other. And she, as she does, is crying on contact. It's like, Razieh, cry. And she cries and you're sunk. But she's upset. Like she's lost her money for the goldfish. And they're using that money. It's not a sense that they're going to take it from her, but they're using her almost as part of their show. So they're exploiting her.
Totally.
But
and she's literally terrified too.
She's terrified, but they do come back around. So they're
Right.
not like these evil Pinocchio, circus people. Like, they joke with her, they play with her, but then they're like, okay, we understand that your mother's money and we do need to eat tonight. That said, you can have it back. And it's just a brilliantly played scene. Just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. But it is the beginning of this idea of how Panahi presents adults as intentionally confusing to kids. Like, are they kind of punishing them for being children and not understanding the world, or are they being playful with them, or are they being mean to them? It's not absolutely clear what Panahi thinks of adults' perspective on kids. And it proceeds right away to the next one, which is the goldfish salesman, who immediately is seeing Razieh as a sucker. It's like, oh, I know you wanted that fat white goldfish. You had asked me about it before, and I told you it was 100 Taman. But it's like, no, actually, it's 200.
Yeah.
Right?
And then again, your stomach sinks for her.
Yeah.
You're like, oh no, you're not going to get your fish,
But then it sinks further because she's actually lost the tomato. At first, I don't think it's true. Like, no, you couldn't. It's like you literally had it in this goldfish bowl. How do you lose the money?
How do you lose it?
And she's lost it. But in her losing the money, the goldfish salesman uses this as an opportunity to kind of torment her about the money, right?
Exactly. He pulls out all the different bills and he's like, was it this bill, which is blue? And we know the bill she lost was red.
Yeah.
She's like, no, it wasn't that bill. He's like, are you sure? How do you even know? And then he brings out another one and he's right. He's just tormenting her with the money.
Yeah. And in the meantime, this is the best part, is Razieh, who had come to get goldfish from their courtyard, suddenly we realize is a street hustler practically, because he sells those 2 goldfish to the goldfish salesman for 250. Exactly. And you're like, what the fuck?
Exactly. You're like, she could have sold her own goldfish for one of the fat ones.
Exactly. Yeah. And so
that's a great touch. But like you said, I mean, one of the real magic of this film for me is none of it's ever beaten over your head. Like, Panahi, you wouldn't have known it was Reza unless you were really watching pretty closely. It's not like they were hiding it, but they weren't beating it over your head. It was just part of the cityscape. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's just, and it continues, and he just like eventually pushes her out, and she's like, 7-year-old girl shoved to the streets, no money. And he's like, go find it. And there's this kind older woman that finds her, who plays the role of like surrogate for a moment. And you're like, okay, finally of course it's a mother, right? That would find a girl crying and try to help her. Even though there is another mother who precedes her with her own son, is like, what's going on? Where's your mom? And then she's like, I lost my money. I wanted to buy a goldfish, which is great. Like, this is the best thing, is she repeats her desire over and over and over again, right? To everybody, every stranger. Ultimately, she's like, it's my mom's money. I have this job to buy the goldfish. I need to figure this out.
So I want to interlude here with the woman who is supposedly the good woman who takes her back to follow. And then she takes her back all the way to when she went to see the snake charmers.
Yep.
And the money's not there. And then she says, you shouldn't hang out with these snake charmers, wagging her finger. Yep. And that's when she says, I just wanted to see what's not good for me. She's like, didn't your parents tell you that? And she's like, yes, my parents did. So she's almost kind of starting to interrogate her here. Well,
Totally.
there was a moment when Miles must have been 6 or 7, I don't know, young. Antonella, who was kind of a hippie and like kind of believes in the American experiment. She's from Italy. We were in Fredericksburg, Virginia, small town Virginia, and she gives Miles some money and she says, go up to the market and buy some eggs. So the
Oh,
market was like 2 blocks away, but like you
okay.
had to walk by, James Monroe High School to get to the market. So it was a little bit of a way. But Miles was kind of like, he was like happy-go-lucky kid. He's like, all right, takes the money, knows exactly where he's walking to. He's walking to this park, or no, to this market, and this woman is driving past, and she's like, young boy, and Miles is like, yes, hi, and she's like, where are your parents? And he's
Oh
like, well,
no.
no, my parents sent me, you know where this is going, my parents sent me to the market to get some eggs. She pulls over, she brings, like, stops the kid, calls the cops. The
No
cops
way.
come.
Oh my.
Miles comes home 15 minutes later in a cop car. The cops are, I'm opening the door, and the cops are like, is this your son? And Miles is all like, that was great. I got to ride the cop car. And I'm like, Antonella, what are you doing? This is America. There's no room for freedom with kids. And
No, there's
it
no
was
community around.
exactly.
There is no,
And
it takes a village to raise a child.
exactly. I mean, the first thing this woman does is call the cops. Talk about like an immediate institutional intervention. So
Yeah.
when I saw this woman in this film, I was like, that's that fucking woman who called the cops on Miles. Anyway, that's my story.
She tries to gatekeep Razieh a bit, right? But at the same time, she ultimately is helpful.
But
And
not when she needs to be, because
no,
she's like, okay, will you get the money? And he's like, yes, because he's glad handing her and like thinking her as business, whatever. And he's not really even listening. But once she leaves, she says, everything's good here. I'm going to go.
right.
Razieh's left there. And am I
Razieh,
pronouncing
right.
her name? Razieh.
Razieh.
Razieh is left there.
Yeah.
And, everything goes to shit.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing is, right. So this is the next handoff to the next set of adults that like Razieh encounters. And this is probably the most AmeriCorps scene of it. It made me think a lot of the family dinner and like the chaos of conversation, because what happens is Razieh finds her, it's like serendipitous, lucky. She finds the 500 Toman bill riding the edge of a gutter grate, right? And then a motorbike immediately runs it over, and it sinks into the gutter grate. And so they go to
Antonella was like, no, like when that happened. She's like, no, like, this film has you in the palm of its hand.
Oh, it really
My
does. Yeah, yeah. It really is pretty great, And so, the older woman, the nice air quoted older woman, and Razieh go to the adjacent venue, which is
Taylor.
a tailor, and which is a scene unto itself. Like the tailor is yelling at a customer, and at the same time, there's a boy sitting in a loft inside this tiny workshop, sewing away on something, and
Sweatshop City, right?
yeah, and he's talking, and this is the best part. It's like the discourse. Well, first we should say, like, basically the older woman says, will you help this girl get her money? He's like, oh yes, of course, very much. And so she leaves, as you said, and said, like, I'm done, right? And that's part of this idea is the adults,
She taps out, right?
yeah, they all tap out. Like, even like they're all like, oh, I'll be helpful, but nah, I got shit to do, right? And so this tailor, he immediately ignores her as soon as the older woman walks away and is yelling at this customer. And it's the most comedic scene probably in the whole film, where he's talking about, you made my collar on my shirt too big. Can you fix it? And the response is, I can't fix your body's size, right? Because he
can't fix your head.
Yeah. You think your collar needs to be smaller because your head's too small. I can't fix how small your head is, which is the best line. Like the idea of it's like, of course I'll fix your collar. It's like, no, it's your fault. It's your body, man, not mine.
Exactly. And you realize quickly, just he's not going to be a very helpful guy, or at least he's
No,
prickly, right? Like
no.
he's going to be a bit prickly because he's got his problems with his customers and he treats them like shit. And there's a back and forth and he won't let it
Yeah.
go. But, like with every character in this uh, film we come up across, it's never just one-sided, right?
Right.
Every character is actually both kind of a pain in the ass and a jackass, but also kind of awesome
Yeah.
and nice. And
Yeah.
like there's never one or the other. They're all just people,
Yeah.
It's great.
And this is, and it immediately presents itself because Razieh doesn't know what to do now. So she decides to run back to the goldfish settlement just to see if the fish is still there, right? She's like, well, if I'm like on this adventure to try to fix and reclaim my 500 tomon bill that's now in the gutter, I mean, I'm going to see if it's worthwhile and try to see if the goldfish is still there. And it's there. But the interesting thing is, you're right. Like the goldfishman suddenly flips into this, like, here, just take it. Here's your jar. Here's your goldfish.
Exactly.
You can, I'll pay me later. Right.
It's
And
like he had his fun with her.
yep.
And now he's like, you know what? Just take it. I'm just, I'm busting your chops. Just take the fish. It's fine. You can owe
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And she's like, no, 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 no. It's my mother's money. Right. Like, and
Yeah.
that's the refrain, is it's not my money to give credit towards or anything like that. And the idea of money is interesting and something I think we'll discuss towards the end. And you found some historical political context. I think that's interesting to frame it as well. So she runs back like, no, I'm just going to go get my money out of the gutter. And there's all these like great scenes that are very childlike, where they're just like framing their hands around their faces so they can block out the light, so they can see into the dark space, and they know the bill is down there. And thankfully, Ali shows up and her brother. And this is the other side. It's not just negotiations. This is the other side of the bond of siblings, right? Where they're ultimately really looking out for one another, especially an older sibling for a younger sibling. And Ali turns into like MacGyver problem solving mode. Like, he's fucking
Totally.
amazing. Like, he's like, okay, yeah, it's down there. And this is what the frame, and just to show the image, if you're watching on YouTube, we see Ali just like, basically thinking, right? And poor Razieh is just like, so how are we going to get it? And he's like, I don't know. It's like, but it's down there and we have to get it and we're running out of time. And he's like, I don't know. And then it keeps going like that for a
It's
number
so
of
good.
minutes until he comes up with an idea. And each idea, first it's the shopkeeper, the tailor. He's closing, for the day because it's the new year. And it's really wonderful too, because in his closing, we see the tailor is actually really kind too, because first the boy who we think is like a little sweatshop character, and you're like, God, poor kid. It's the Iranian New Year. And so the boy's saying like, hey, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to see my family. And he's like, yeah, of course you're not going to be here. I'll see you when you get back. And then he gives him his money that he's owed, and he
Yeah.
gives him all these presents to give to his family. Right.
Yeah. It
And
is. It's a nice scene. And then that guy is redeemed.
right. And he seems to, and then suddenly, like, so he's this incredibly generous human being, not just like an annoyed at having to deal with a man who doesn't know that the size of the collar is perfect. It's his head's fucked up. And then what's so great is like, he has the puller for the gate, the steel gates, which is a very New York City thing too. Like if you're a city
Yeah.
person, these are very familiar. And I've seen them with, they take any form of a pole and they put this massive hook on it so they can pull it down and not have to reach it, because no one's like ever tall enough or strong enough to do it by themselves otherwise, because these things are freaking heavy and no one's got a motor on it or chains. They're just like,
It's true. And then they hit the ground. It's like,
yeah. And so Ali sees this as an opportunity. It's like, hey, can I borrow that to try to get the bill? And so he's doing it. And again, the tailor is like, wait, let me actually help. You're doing it wrong. And so he tries, but then he immediately gives up. Right.
yeah. Because there's a limit of time, right? There's
Yeah,
always a limit of how much patience any single adult has for these kids.
exactly.
And that's like it's an ongoing thing
Mhm.
where, right, you get the sense that, they only have so much time to dedicate to it. And I think that's a subtle kind of critique that Panahi is kind of casting against everyone, good or bad, right? Like there's only so much time you're going to have for the kids in your community or
Yeah.
for the people in your community. And why
Right.
is that, right?
Right. But even in your own children too, right? You got shit
Yeah,
to do, right? You
it's
know,
true.
Zarai's got like, man, this celebration is, and there's also this very interesting aspect of there's a radio announcer that constantly pops in, not constantly, pops in probably about 4 times throughout the movie, telling us how much time is left before the new
Yeah,
year.
it's
And
true.
so it effectively, there's a ticking clock to this whole escapade of getting this goldfish at the same
And
time.
it's not one to one, but it's pretty close. Like because you learn it's like an hour and a half or almost
Right.
2 hours to New Year at the beginning of the film, and by the end of the film, it's essentially New Year. So it
Yeah.
is happening all in real time,
Yeah.
and people are closing up as they're going home to
Exactly.
celebrate, and like you feel this tension
Mhm.
around whether she's actually even going to be able to get the fish from the fish guy in
Yeah.
time because it's starting to everything's starting to get like time is of the essence. It's so
Yeah.
fun. I love that. Like I am rooting for the 7-year-old to get her freaking goldfish. When would
But
I ever care about something like that?
but instead, you're rooting for her to not get kidnapped in the
There
because
is a strange
yeah,
interlude.
yeah, because next in a soldier enters the story, and Panahi in his form basically hiring non-actors. This guy was like basically a university student at Tehran, and you can tell he's not an actor. He's like very much reading his lines in a lot of ways, and it's this very awkward, holy shit, stranger danger moment, right?
Stranger danger, exactly.
And he sits down to her in the same situation, like, because Ali has gone off to find the actual owner, because through like the tailor and then a neighbor, he's learned that the owner is still actually around, even though the tailor thinks he's away, like 400 kilometers away. And the soldier somehow knows this too. And the soldier sits down, and you're just like, kind of, whenever this happens throughout this like escapade, whenever Razieh is left alone, you're like, oh shit, right? Again, right? It
Yeah.
happens a couple times, like when she's like kind of pushed off initially by the goldfish salesman, and she walks out onto the street by herself. You're like, kind of like, and she's crying, so she's really vulnerable. You're like, oh shit, right? And this happens a couple times, and this is like the scariest one ultimately, and it seems scary initially because he's like, hey, little girl, you want some candy?
He's lurking. Like you see him once
Yeah.
before in a
Mhm.
shot, and then not for another maybe 5 minutes does he show up again. And then right, he's like, "You want some sunflower seeds, and you want a pastry?" And
Yeah.
she's sitting there like she did in the background image on the grate, sitting with him, and she's kind of putting her dress to cover the money, and
Yep.
like she's just, I mean, she's great, but he's kind of pushing himself in, and you as a viewer, because there has been very little like conflict of a kind
Yeah.
that would be like scary. There's
Right.
been a lot of conflict with like that guy was a jerk, or oh, she lost her movie, but there's been very little with like, oh, this is really dangerous and this young girl is in danger. Like you haven't felt that in the same way yet. Maybe a
Mhm.
little bit with the snakes, but like this was a weird, it's like a different feeling, right?
Very different, yeah. I mean, it's closest to the snake charmers because it does, the snake charmers bring her to tears, but that's more because they stole her money, right?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
and there's all these people around, so you don't feel like she's in jeopardy, like, but
Yeah.
in this situation where she's alone, here's this young adult that's, like, asking her questions. It's inappropriate, and Razier is immediately, not answering any of his questions, and she's just like, "Go away, go away, go away." But then he does this thing where he's like, "No, I'm not really a stranger. I'm a good guy, blah blah blah." That's still not good. But he talks about, "I have sisters. I have one that's 5 who's your age." And she's like, "I'm not 5." She finally speaks up, as you mentioned, like you corrected
Exactly.
me.
I'm 7.
And I'm 7 and I'm really smart and I get all A's. What are you gonna do with that? Right?
Exactly. She should have gotten Best Actress this year,
Yeah.
man. She was
Oh my
amazing.
god, she is amazing. And then it does this switch into where she's like asking questions about him and like, hey, so why aren't you going home for the holiday like
Yeah.
all people do? And and it's like, you have sisters, don't you miss them, don't you want to see them? And then there's this coy, like, playing with each other, because he's curious about her family. Like, what does your father do? And she's like, he doesn't work at first, and it's because he has two jobs and I can only tell you about one.
Which is such a weird
Yeah,
thing, and they
I
do
love
that
that.
several times. You brought that up. There are a lot of things you just don't ever know
Yeah.
as an audience member, and this is another one. You never know what the dad's second job is.
Yeah, and so he mimics her playfulness and says, "Well, I'll tell you, I have two reasons why I'm not going home, but I'll share with you one." And he's like, "I basically don't have enough money, right? I can't buy a bus ticket.
Exactly.
I can't buy presents for my family and my daughters, my sisters, not daughters, my sisters, and I don't want to show up empty-handed." And he's like, "Baby, once I'm done with my service, I'll go home and have money and things like that," which is this it does speak to this moment about money is something, and it reminds me a little bit of like the way that money plays a factor in 400 Blows. And there's all the conversation about like we don't have enough money and like they're
Yeah.
stealing money from one another, and you worry that he's going to steal her money, but then it turns into you almost worry she's going to offer him the
That's
money.
right. She
you know
starts doing the math. She's like,
yeah.
"Okay, how much is your bus ticket gonna cost? And how
Yeah.
much what are you gonna get for your sisters? And
And it's like,
here's good advice of what to get for your
yeah,
sisters."
which is really, really charming, right? She's like, no, no, that's a terrible present, you should get her this, right?
Get her a fruit roll up. But I
Basically, yeah.
right, but the thing too is like even this interaction, as strange as it starts, like it remains human.
Mhm.
And it's a
Yeah.
relatable moment. And he's from a small town. So, basically saying like our alienation in the city is part of what's killing us because I know everybody's name and where I'm from. And it's not strange to talk to strangers because there are no strangers where I'm from.
Right,
And
yeah.
so, like, there's that whole critique of, that sense of fear that
Mhm.
maybe even as an audience we immediately take to it.
Yeah.
He is a soldier though, and Iran is
Yeah.
coming off, a brutal war with Iraq, and there is this kind of rebuilding moment, and it's still very militarized. So you don't know what to make of it, right? Especially given that, I'm not Iranian and I don't know exactly what that would mean for a soldier to walk up to a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so in the meantime, like, Ali sees this from a distance too, and he's like gesturing his sister. It's like, run away, like run away. And she's like, and it's so great. It's so childlike too, how Razieh does this. She's like, she's trying to interpret her gestures at a distance, which are supposed to be secret, but she's trying to interpret it out loud in front of the sister. It's like, what do you want me to do?
Exactly. She's mouthing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
it's so awesome. And eventually Ali like does intervene and grabs his sister, like, what the hell are you doing talking to strangers? And Razieh is like, he's not a stranger. He taught me that he's not a stranger. But then he just exits. He's gone, right? As
Yeah.
quickly as he was in there, and it was awkward and scary at first, but then interesting and provocative about what does it mean to be a stranger, as you described. He's suddenly gone, and it's
And that's really that
yeah,
Amicord piece you're talking about.
yeah,
These characters come in, they have a moment, and then they move out.
yeah,
And then that's really this sense of Tehran and the city and the
yeah.
world. And it's really well done.
Yeah, and that's what makes Amarcord what I loved about it. It's like it was so chaotic and confusing the first time. I was like constantly like, wait, who's this? Who's this? What's going on? Like, I don't know these characters, and it's another culture's presentation, and that's why I love the family dinner. Like, why is everybody yelling at one another? And so, why are strangers talking to little girls? And why is no one really doing the thing what is happening in the United States? It's like, which is pulling up and like calling the parents and saying, like, you gotta get your kid.
Yeah, get your kid out. So, okay, let me just take a quick stop here.
Yeah.
We're an hour and a half into the film.
Yeah.
What's the title of this film?
Oh, the white balloon.
Okay. So she had a blue balloon early on.
Yep.
There is no sense. There's a goldfish. So I thought maybe they like misinterpreted, like it's the white goldfish is what this movie is really supposed to be called, not the white balloon. But that all changes in the last 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah, because Ali, Mr. Problem Solver, finds the next solution, which is he sees this balloon boy, a boy who turns out to, yeah, he is, who turns out to be an Afghan, refugee, most likely. who's working for a pittance to sell balloons, and as part of his family is trying to survive, as they're navigating the war with the Soviet Union, as you put in the political notes, and that's probably what's going on, right? Because
Yeah.
Panahi very much intentionally places all these different cultures in the film. Like there's a lot of intentionality as like the multicultural space that Tehran is, but he's not focusing on one. He wants you to see this pastiche of people from all these disparate places, like the Sufi dervish snake charmers. Now we're seeing this Afghan boy, the soldier who is from a village far away. And so he's really trying to incorporate this kind of broad look at what Tehran life is for different people through the lens of this cute little 7-year-old girl that wants a goldfish.
And it's at this point to me that, I was like, oh, wow, that Afghan kid, that's interesting. And then it's like, oh, wait, there's a bit of the parable here going on. And what's happening is, a third of the Afghanistan population pre Russian Afghanistan war, and then they had a civil war, and it was a complete nightmare. And then America invaded. So they've been at war for like 50 years. But like a third of their population were refugees that went to Pakistan or to Iran.
Yeah.
And so like millions of people had to leave. And obviously that was a huge issue for Afghanistan, but also for Iran to manage that. And then they became marginal second-class citizens, as often happens when refugees come in. And so here you have this kid, right? Who's the you learn is a second-class citizen according to Iran, and is kind of a victim of these geopolitical moves that have been happening in Afghanistan. And 6 years after this movie, we're going to get 9/11, right? And the Taliban is going to be linked directly to Afghanistan. And a month later, America is going to go to war for another 20 years. Like, this is actually a very interesting parable for a moment in time in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm not, that's interesting to look back and say, here's this Afghanistan marginalized kid who's the only one who actually takes the time, arguably, to see it through. Right?
Yeah.
He gets in a fight with him at first. Him and Ali fight because Ali just steals his balloon stick. It's like, it's mine. And he goes in, and the kid's like, wait, what are you doing? And obviously, probably feeling very defensive, starts fighting with Ali. Ali's basically trying to explain him, and then they work together. And they're trying to get the $500 bill or $5,000 bill with, or 5,000 rial bill with the stick. But it's not going to work. And they finally come up with this solution, like, we need chewing gum. Right. And it's an interesting scene because Ali runs off, like you said, to the MacGyver, and he comes to a blind chewing gum salesman or candy salesman.
Yeah, well, he's got chewing gum and cigarettes. Like he's literally like sitting on the sidewalk blind, and we see a kid, do a transaction for some gum, and he can't see, and you get a sense like Ali's considering stealing some gum from him.
But he doesn't, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And he runs back, and the Afghanistan balloon salesman has left. And, they're kind of destitute now. They're not going to steal to do this because they want to make matters worse, but they're there. But the Afghanistan kid comes back and has bought them all chewing gum. And so they start playing, and they're all chewing the chewing gum together, and they have like this little game that they're doing. Who's going to chew the most quickest. They say stop. They all put it on the stick, and they go in and they take turns at trying to get the money.
Yeah.
And it's this wonderful scene, right? And at the same time, the guy who owns the store, who they've been trying to track down to open it up so they can get into his basement and get the bill, comes back. And he's a laugh riot. He's like, hey, what are you kids doing? He's just great and loose and joking. And there's this weird guy who rides by on the bicycle several times. And he says something. What does he say? He says something to the effect of like,
something about the weather, and it's like he's singing, and it's happened at the beginning of the film too. And that's these are like probably like cultural inside jokes that we would never understand unless we're Iranian. And back to like the idea of the Afghan boy, this is, you pointed out, and I think, this is very intentional on Panahi's part, where these are almost like archetypes, because he knows that Iranians are going to recognize who each and every single one of these characters from different parts of society is based on how they speak. Because even the soldier talks about, I have an accent, right?
Yes,
That I haven't
exactly.
lost yet. And so these are all things that we don't identify as Americans, so clearly, but Panahi is pointing them all out. And with our like close reading, where we latch on to them, which is really kind of amazing, because this is supposed to be a children's movie. And this is the idea.
Exactly.
It's like, these are all the hidden messages in there for the Iranian culture. And then for others that, take the time to read it for what it really is, which is this story of a culture that is caring for a child, but at the same time has its own business to do. And what does that mean, in the many things? And then to focus the end, because in a sense, what happens is we think, oh, it's going to be the adult that saves the day, and he's going to open up his store and he's going to be able to get the bill. But they're like, no, man, we've got this. We're figuring this out. This has been fun at the very end. And so they get it. They get the bill. And, Ali and Razieh run up to get the goldfish. And it's funny. So then we start to see and it just, but at the same time, what's so interesting is it stays on the balloon boy,
Yeah.
right?
With the
And
one white balloon left
with the
to
one
sell.
white balloon left to sell. And then we see a couple characters, like I think the dervish, like snake charmers, pass by, and then the guy whose head was too small passes by.
Exactly. And it gives him a light to light his cigarette, and they're
Yeah,
talking, and they're
yeah,
there in front of the Afghanistan kid, or Afghani kid.
yeah. And then even um, Ali and Razieh fly by with the goldfish, and they're
Yeah.
out of frame. So their adventure's over, but that's not the end of the story, because the end of the story is Panahi wants us to focus on the Afghan boy, and it ends literally on like a 400 blows styled freeze frame of him.
Totally.
You know,
It's interesting. And, and it probably means a lot of different things. And I'm not going to pretend, but this whole
right?
idea of 1995 Iran rebuilding from the war with Iraq, and
Hmm.
kind of and the fact that economic times were hard,
Yeah,
and people were trying to make do with what they had. And obviously you have these refugees who are kind of dealing with what was happening in Afghanistan. And there's a certain amount of just sense of like rebuilding. And when you came into this movie, one of the reasons I avoided it in 1995 when it was out is like, I don't know if I want to see a movie about a war torn, very
mm,
political, over the top Iranian film. Like, that could be hard. But it's that, but without any of that, because
right.
it's this beautiful parable about a culture and the very people who live in it daily, the quotidian lives of how they're dealing with all those facts. But in the fact, every single character is a human.
Yeah,
Every single character is just dealing with the world in which they are and trying to make ends meet. In fact, the filmmaking itself reflects that. I
hmm,
mean, it is down and dirty, man in the street, making awesome films with great stories that are reflecting the culture in which Iran finds itself in 1995. And I think it's just for that reason alone, between the filmmaking, this whole notion, and the political notion at the time was the Rafsanjani years.
mm,
These were years from 89 to 97. Like, it's time to rebuild, it's time to recover from the war. And this is really a kind of very kind of, I don't know, I think authentic look at what that looks like, even if it is fiction. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But you get a sense that you're on the streets of Tehran looking at a small community and what's happening in a couple of hours.
yeah. And it's interesting, I mean, this is a very simplistic perspective of what's going on in Iran right now with, Trump's war against Iran.
Jesus.
And you can imagine you have people trying to navigate, their daily lives in Tehran and war torn areas. And it reminds me of, like, I'm if there's any social media I'm on, it's Reddit at this point in my life. And in the beginning, you could sign up for simple subreddits, and that would be all you see. It was very much like Twitter was originally. Like, you follow certain people, that's all you see. But they had the algorithm hit them, so occasionally it's fine. You see cool stuff. And I remember one of the things I saw is it was showing photographs of people in Iran. And technically it was Tehran, and I think it was mostly university students, and they were young and they were super cool looking and hip. And all the comments are like, whoa, these look like real people, right? Like they're not,
Exactly.
they look like people I'd love to hang out with. That's what all the Reddit comments were about. And that's kind of what it makes me think of the way you're talking about this. It's like, it's just in a lot of ways, normal people that are navigating the atrocities around them, and they're not atrocious people ultimately, right?
Yeah, and it's like when you tell that story of the geopolitics slant, or even straight on with just people dealing with it, not with the overhead of like not without my daughter, where it's just propaganda. This in many ways is the opposite.
Yeah,
it's just people finding themselves in a place dealing with the world in which they are. And not to even make it better from a 7-year-old's point of view, who doesn't have the baggage of the politics like a 30 or 40-year-old protagonist might. So it's just brilliantly done in so many ways.
Yeah. This makes me think Better Off Dead. Instead of I want my $5, I want my goldfish.
Exactly. I want my 500 riale or 5,000 riale.
Yeah.
Anyway, what is it called? What is their
Toman?
Toman, and then the actual one
is reales. Yeah.
Reales.
Yeah. And interesting enough, it was a 10-to-1 ratio, but now it's 10,000 to 1 because the inflation is. And so they changed the Toman has changed what it means because it's a colloquial description of the amount of money. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not like a finance person, but I do like the inflation numbers. I bring them up occasionally when there's numbers that are thrown at us from time periods. Okay, thanks everybody. We've got more international films coming. I don't know. What are we doing next? Or we can keep it hidden. But it's definitely...
I kind of want to do Raise the Red Lantern. And one of the things about this film we didn't even talk about.
Sure.
But so we'll just take another minute. When we talked about, to make the connection, when we talked about Muriel's wedding, we talked a lot about the family you find.
Yeah.
And in this way, the family was actually the community. Mm-hmm. And it was like, can we refine that sense of community after 10 years of, ravaging? And like sending the 7-year-old out into the community to see if that's possible is kind of like a litmus test of that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the filmmaker saying, like, can we rebuild on some very basic levels? So something as simple as a goldfish. Like, can we help this girl achieve her goal? And I think the community, because the parents are absent. Once they leave, the parents are there in like, authoritative spirit. But it's just these two kids navigating the city, Yeah. And that's very interesting. And I think it has something to do with Muriel's wedding, because Muriel's wedding is like, find your own family. And here it's like, can the community be that family?
Right. Yeah. Which AmeriCorps is very much too, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Well, great way to end it. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.